Shanti, thank you, Brother Eric, and welcome everyone to our Thursday evening session at Harmony House. As always, we promise you a very special evening with a very special senior because they're all seniors and they're also special. And I have to tell you, last time we had scheduled Sister Waddy, unfortunately, she had to cancel. She wasn't well, but here she is, and I am so excited. I know her better than she knows me because of YouTube, because of Peace Village visits where she was on a panel of seniors. And there I am, little old me in the audience, rubbing elbows for a whole weekend with these beautiful sisters who have taught me so much. So I'm excited to be with you, Sister Waddy, for this hour. Of course, the topic this evening, as you know, the theme is rediscovering our spiritual roots. Most of you here are regulars. Every Thursday, you come as often as you can. Show of hands, anybody here who's new, whom I can see? If you'll, hi, welcome, Jeffrey. Anyone else? Let's see, I want to get a grid going here. Oh, hello there. Anshu, welcome, welcome. Anyone else brand new to us this evening? Okay, and for the rest of you, you might look at this theme and say, well, rediscovering our spiritual roots. We talk about that every week. It's the same old stuff. Am I a body with a soul, or am I a soul with a body? And if you've been coming to our group often enough, or perhaps taking the class, you know that we believe we are a soul that travels, taking many bodies along the way. And the question still remains, though, in the topic tonight. We're exploring our identity. Essentially, who am I? Now, many people may see you. Think about it a second. Think about the roles you play. I am an English teacher. I'm a mother. I'm a grandmother 7 times. Ooh. I am a wife. I am a participant, a sister. I was saving the best for last. I happen to be a Lokik sister too, and I have a brother and a sister. But of course, what Sister Waddy means, I'm sure, is that I am a student, and a very serious student, of the Brahma Kumaris. And this is a beautiful role I play. That also means I take a role as part of a group, part of this family, part of my family, many, many groups. So process for yourself, where is the answer in all of that? I'm sure you have your own list of who you are and where do you belong. But fundamentally, when the door is closed and I'm alone, who am I? And whom do I belong to? And does my identity change depending on who I'm with? How do I see myself? Do I have high self-esteem? Do I have low self-esteem? There are so many ways we can perceive the world and perceive ourselves. And how we perceive ourselves often dictates how we see the world, you know. So I think that the meditation today was a beautiful introduction, little segment to Sister Waddy. And I'm also wondering if perhaps she'll talk tonight about how we bring since the theme of the month is rediscovering our spiritual roots, how we bring our spirituality into situations in everyday life. How do we elevate ourselves? How do we touch other people in a way that helps them to feel better about themselves, to be nicer, to be sweeter, to be kinder? So we have a very deep, deep evening in front of us, I'm sure, and Sister Waddy to help us along. Very quickly, I want to tell you that don't tell anyone, but her real name isn't Waddy. And I would love to know how you got that name, if that's part of what you want to talk about. But her name is Veronica McHugh, and she's been studying and teaching meditation with the Brahma Kumaris for over 45 years. She's originally from Ireland and is currently based in Miami in the center there. And she is the director of the Brahma Kumaris in Florida. In her sessions, she shares practical experiences enriched, I can attest to this, with deep reflection and understanding. And she does, in fact, inspire a sense of hope and upliftment and creates a warmth wherever she goes to all people belonging on a spiritual path, as we all are, because we're here this evening. So, Sister Waddy, without further ado, welcome to Harmony House, Great Neck, Long Island, New York, this evening. And thank you for making the trip. Good
Thank
evening.
you so very much, Louise. That was lovely and spoken from the heart, like a real sister. And that's the feeling, or should be the feeling, I guess, in connection with all others, that they're part of the same family. So this question as to belonging and where do I belong, where do I fit in, and maybe to whom do I belong? And is the answer that I might come up with, is there a reality to it? Or is belonging more about a feeling? You know, which comes first? And the general sense is that at the present time, we live in what maybe some would describe as a very lonely culture. And despite technology and the emphasis on connectivity, yet there's a feeling of aloneness or loneliness, I think, in the hearts of many, many people. And I'm not sure if that is just a sign of the times or it has always been like that. And I think that maybe going back in time, there was more structured units of belonging, that is, of support and of knowing and of being validated. And perhaps those in some ways are eroding more and more. Yeah. And so it might look like a bad thing, but everything has a good side. And perhaps just like, say, for instance, when you have a child and you mentioned that you're a mother and surprise, you're a grandmother too, that you know that you give nurturance to your children and there's home, but ultimately what you've given them should make them independent and independent enough to go out and maybe create another family, another home, but it doesn't mean that they've cut off from their origins, from their original home. They can still go back there and feel at home. But ultimately, the movement is towards some kind of independence and maybe spiritually speaking, a freedom, a certain freedom, a freedom from all of the constructs. And I was thinking, you know, to what do we belong? And so we can give, a litany and say that I belong on the earth. I belong to the human race. I belong on this continent. I belong to that country. I belong to, this generation. I belong to that caste. I belong to this family. Most of them are kind of social constructs. And again, can my belonging to them at some point be invalidated? Can my belonging, my feeling of belonging, be taken away from me? And I suppose too, that's something that we see in the world today. So many people feeling marginalized and not being included. And even though on the one hand, I'm saying that, that I supposedly belong to all of these things, at another level, I don't belong to any of them. And it's more like the feeling of having been adopted, that even if my adopted parents treat me like as if I'm absolutely theirs and give me all that I need for my maturing and my growth, yet there's something in me that senses there's another family, there's another part that that I'm missing, in a sense. And so there's something in the soul that might even be equated with a longing. And we might try and fill that longing by relationships or by possessions or achievements, etc. But all of that will also be a little bit temporary, and yet it is something in the soul of each one. And so for this thing of belonging, ultimately, I think where we have to get to is being comfortable with your own self. And so what was I looking for? What was the longing that was in me when I reached the Brahma Kumaris? And I do remember very clearly when it was presented, part of it was presented. This is after I'd been involved, not completely joining yet, the idea of a family. And it didn't make a lot of sense to me because I felt I already had a family, but with the maturing and the understanding of spiritual concepts, then my definition of family changed somewhat. And so in belonging to a spiritual family, it was like, along with that, it was like the whole world belonged to you. A friend of mine often says that a heart with God in it belongs to everyone. And so just about an hour before we came together, my sister had called me from Ireland and she had sent me a picture, and it was from the stone mason who's working on my mother's headstone, right? My mother had died. And again, my father's name was on it. My youngest brother's name was on it. And what my sister wanted to know was about leaving a space so that my name could be put on it, And so I wrote back to her and I said, the stone was very beautiful, but it really didn't matter to me, whether my name was on it or not, because more than likely, I would be cremated, and even if the ashes went there, but it wasn't important. But what I was appreciating was when it comes to belonging, there's roles, there's rights, and there's responsibilities. And so I was feeling that I wouldn't claim that right, but they were willing to give me that right because they had the feeling of my belonging to them, and I certainly wouldn't dispute it. Yes, they're the family that I was born into, and I'm, happily so. And so this thing of, where do you fit in the picture so that others feel you belong to them. And what I've often seen in the spiritual context, it is when someone comes in and there's a willingness to participate, there's a willingness to do something, and it's almost like, that's indicative of a subtle form of membership. In other words, that although you're not thinking along these lines, but that you've taken something from the group, you've gotten something through the group, and your nature automatically in turn is generous and wants to also contribute. And so, this thing of some of you may remember the song. In fact, I think he may have performed it at one of our programs at St. John the Divine, Richie Havens. And the song was, sometimes I feel like a motherless child, a long way from my home. And, we're all travelers. We've all, perhaps in different guises and doing different things, but in a way, it is that desire to return home. And we're not talking about a country or anything like that, but again, it's an eternal longing. It's a very profound thing, because, what does it mean when, what is the feeling when you belong? You feel at home, you feel valued, you feel what? You feel seen, you feel comfortable. All of those, what other things might you say when there's a feeling of, in fact, when you feel belonging, you don't even think about it. You don't even think about it. You don't question it. It just is. It's only when you don't feel belonging that then the questions arise. And so there's like one thing where in the world that you see that because of sometimes the arrogance of a group or their fear in changing the status quo, that they dismiss you or they exclude you. And it's one of those things that really hurts the heart. The heart is very, very hurt by being excluded or not included. And so I was thinking, what do I do about that? And I'm certainly not against drawing attention to social biases or whatever else that would try and give the message to people that you don't belong here, that you're not worthy, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not rich enough, whatever it happens to be. And as I say, finding a way without any violence or without any arrogance on your own part to kind of expose that. I don't have a problem with it, but, and there, not least in America, we've seen, so many occasions and where those kind of situations have produced heroes, have produced souls with such courage that they were able to stand up to those indignities, and in other words, that they were not buying the messaging that someone else was putting out. And that's something we have to be very careful of too. Who's creating the image for me of what it is that I am or what I should be? By them telling me I'm not worthy, do I then accept that and operate accordingly? And I was thinking of, and you said you're a teacher, that so many occasions when a teacher, and evidently not a good teacher, would tell the child, you're stupid, and not knowing, not that those words should ever come out of her mouth in the first place, but what she's seeing in terms of the child's performance, she equates it with being a dunce, that the child's not smart. And inside the child, there's the thing of the child's not feeling that they're dumb, but perhaps they have, something wrong with their eyes or their hearing or dyslexia or some other condition that limits, they're taking in the information that they're giving, but in their heart of hearts, they know that they're smart. They know that they're not stupid. And so what are the images that we have been fed, when it comes to identity, and that we have negative, coming from a negative source, but are not recognizing that, but because they're authority figures, they're parents, they're priests, they're teachers, and because they said it, then it must be so. And how it limited or pushed back our development on all sorts of levels, not just academically, socially, but spiritually. But yet that little voice in the soul kind of knew better and, persisted or challenged it and found their way to a place where they could become cognizant of what really was in their soul, what they were designed for, that there was, a part, if you like, in the soul that that they had something to contribute, and in its contributing, that they were then automatically increasing potential for themselves and understanding of themselves. And so I feel we're in this big churning at the minute, and that really, truly, the only question is who am I? And it's about finding, do I just find a group of people that resonate with my perception of myself? Identity is a bigger issue today, I think, than it's ever been. I'm in this body, but I don't feel I'm this gender. I've all these different things. And so the question, who am I? Okay, it may be resolved because there's some, I've forgotten the name that's used for it, that in relation to your own body, is it dysphoria? I've forgotten the name. But that all of that can be at least temporarily attended to, but you are still the soul, and that just happens to be the costume that you have at this time. And okay, if you want to change it and it makes you feel better and that's the way to go, then that's up to you, that's your choice. But even beyond that, that is limited again. And so the question still persists, who am I? And for us, of course, it's in terms of the eternal and that which is immortal. And so this discovery of being something more than my race and my nationality and my social standing and my educational qualifications and all of that, but that paradoxically, I'm just a spark of light. And on the other hand, that there's a huge part within me. And I think two of the things when it comes to, and I'm sure I touch on this in every single talk that I give, that it's such a fundamental part of the philosophy of the Brahma Kumaris. And yet it is imperative that I get it, that I grasp it, and that it will assist me in every situation, every human interaction in which I'm involved. And that is that the original nature of all of us is the same, And so that I give that respect to you, because no matter how you're presenting, but that I acknowledge that in you. And having done that, then the subsequent aspect is that I am unique, and that the belonging is not about everybody being the same as me. What a boring world, but rather it's the feeling of belonging in spite of the distance between us or the difference in our life's experience, but we can come into conversation with each other. And in that conversation, discover that our pure desires for ourselves are absolutely the same. You want happiness, you want love, you want to express love, you want to help the world, and you will do it in your way, and I will do it in my way. And so I think it's a very, very important thing, and that you should be able to convey to others that you do not mean them any harm, that you are not out to suppress them, to push them down, or give them the message that you're better than them because you've been studying spirituality for so many years. No, but with that attitude of seeing the real nature of everyone as the same as yours, and also the awareness of the distinction of each one, puts you into a learning mode. In other words, because very often when it comes to when people are discarded or rejected, then the message that is being given, I have nothing to learn from you. You can't teach me anything. I'm the one who knows everything. And yet, when there is a soul conscious awareness, there will be that openness in learning from every human being. And it's not just an idle, it wouldn't just be coming from an idle curiosity, but I think that in getting to know the variety within the human family, you're coming to know something about your own self. And that then better informs you when you're dealing with somebody else. It's just like, although we can't generalize and say, well, okay, I know so many people from this part of the world, at least I have an inkling about you. Yes, the fact that you're from that part of the world will say something about you, but it is not the sum total of everything. And so in that way, the feeling of belonging. And so back to, this thing of the family, and that there's a possibility that this vehicle, when it's turned to ashes, it will return to its origins. It's where the matter came from, that part of the world or whatever. But the soul will have continued its journey. The soul won't stay there. And two things that I was thinking about that, we all know dust thou art and unto dust thou shalt return. That's speaking of the physicality of the person. And then the other thing which I'm reminded of too is that you were made, if made is the appropriate word, that, or let's drop that word and just say you are in the image and likeness of God. And that is what has to be discovered. And so when it comes to, when we're talking about God, we assume, rightly so, that all belong to God. Even if you want to, just like, you may not have a great relationship with your own father or mother, but they're still your father and mother. Even by law, they're still your father and mother. You can't divorce them. And so for that idea of God as the supreme parent, that is a given. And so that all belong to God. And in this way, that in the belonging, then the sustenance from God, spiritually speaking, so that we too can bridge that gap between the limitations of our humanity and the divinity of God, that we can bridge that gap and then interact with the world and with circumstances and with others in the same way that God would, with the feeling that no one's a foreigner, no one's a stranger. These are my brothers and sisters. And it's not just lip service we pay to it, but that recognition that they are the children of the same Father. And so this thing of belonging, it is a feeling, and it doesn't have to do with the limitations of place or space or anything else. I always love the image of the traveler, and the traveler is always free. The traveler doesn't belong anywhere but belongs everywhere. They feel at home wherever they are. And they don't need a quantity of stuff or services or facilities in order to be comfortable, And so it's this thing of coming back into alignment with your own self, and in so doing, then the contentment and I guess the peace, but it doesn't mean that you sit still. You're still on the journey. There's still more to learn. And as you learn, you share that. And in the sharing of it, you're leaving space for more to come in. And so the beauty of, belonging, and I also always like the relationship of friends, because the idea, unlike, say, many other relationships, there's a certain exclusivity in it, and there's a certain possessiveness to do with this belonging. Well, you're mine, you're my wife, you're my child, you're my fill in the blanks, and a real belonging does not have that attitude. When you really have the feeling of belonging to your own self, then you are not going to limit yourself to just one person who's your be all and end all. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but the whole thing of belonging, paradoxically maybe, is linked with freedom. That there has to be, a freedom in my belonging, that nobody can tell me you belong, you have to stay here, you have to go there, you have to, only be in this group of people. No, not at all. And so, again, spiritually speaking, then the only one that's going to give me an absolute clear image that can that I can move towards, so that I'm comfortable with my own self, you know. And of course, when people don't feel they belong, you know, then the blame will be, it'll be projected outwards, and even to the extent of where they can harm themselves, that there's such a feeling of loneliness or of being abandoned, or they feel that, you know, that they have they're not of any use. And so what happens here in the spiritual thing, it's a different set of values. It's a different way of looking at you, because we take on all the socializing and the, you know, the constructs and the images that other people project onto us, and we buy into them. And so meditation is what's going to start the uncovering, you know, the leaving aside these limitations and going to the what's inherent in the soul. And so the beauty of the relationship with God is that he gives you a beautiful mirror image and allows you to see yourself the way that God sees you. And God can only see you through his own brilliance. He can only see you through his own light, you know. But when God looks, then you get a reflection of yourself through the eyes of God, and not just momentarily, but there's an energy that goes with it that then compels you to move in that direction and to become more of who you were originally. Because in truth, the journey isn't about going somewhere, it's about returning to what you are, to what you were. This is the sense I think that I have of it anyway. So just a few thoughts.
Just a few. I can't even read my notes. I've scribbled so much on 3 pages here, and I want to talk about everything, and I have so many questions. But I'd also like to remind the audience, if you would like to put a question or a comment into the chat, we can entertain those. I don't know if we can unmute you this evening, but definitely if you want to contribute anything, we're here to share. Sister Waddy, you know, the thing, talking about the BK family, the thing that impresses me the most, and I've been a student for 7 years. I went to Peace Village for the first time 16 years ago.
Okay.
But I worked evenings and never took the course. But the first time, and I've said this before, Sister Dorothy at Peace Village did Drishti, looked me in the eye and said, right in the third eye, you're not a body with a soul, you're a soul with a body. My eyes watered. And you spoke about that instinctive, innate thirst. I forget the exact words you used, but Richie Haven's song, sometimes I feel like a motherless child. I feel like that, the fear of adoption that some children have. And the beautiful thing about the BKs for me is that, you know, we study every morning. We read God's knowledge. He tells us how to be as loving as we can be to ourselves, to him, to others, how to be close. Some children were raised by a different God. And the first thing I had to learn was that God is not a punishing God.
Yeah.
God is incapable of evil. And the second thing I learned when I came here was that the same lesson is given to every student every morning. And it depends on how beautifully I can free, I love you said the word freedom, I can free my heart. I can free my intellect and let Baba chisel away, let God chisel away at the concrete that I may have grown up with because of things you said, like culture and indoctrination and religions, and that we have original this and original that. Well, I learned here that I have original peace and original love. And and then I'll shush. The greatest thing about the BKs too is the lack of, I'll put it positively, the humility. The lack of, this is mine. I belong here. I belong there. There is such beautiful egoless humility. And when I catch myself slipping back into that other role of wanting to belong, I'm feeling excluded. I hang my hat on my BK hook. And I come right back that morning and that night and whenever I can, or I'll talk to a senior sister, and that feeling is slowly going away, that feeling of not belonging. So I was really
interesting. Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
You look like you're all in.
I'm all in. I really, I can't imagine life without that feeling, because to have the perfect parent, many of us did not.
No,
in fact, I think all of us, right, didn't. And the perfect parent cannot make a mistake.
Yeah. And that's the thing you find through this, that whatever you may have been holding, whether it was, criticism of them or whatever, that you're able to just let it go, because you put them in the right context. They too are souls doing the best they could with what they knew,
Yeah. So can we talk a little bit about the power we have to, even vibrationally, you talked about us mirroring God.
Yeah.
There's so many sisters and brothers I know who just walk into a room and they exude.
Yes, absolutely.
So is that just restricted
Didi Mohini is the perfect example of that.
Yeah.
I remember once we had a program called Images and Voices of Hope. I don't think you were around while we had it, but it was journalists, it was media people. And there would be, once a year, we would convene a meeting at Peace Village. And so these people were coming in cold in terms of spirituality or anything else. And Didi would always, come in and meet with them, do a session. And, as far as I was concerned, what she would speak about was tremendously deep, because her own background was political science and journalism. So she was speaking with a great deal of experience. But to other Americans, some Americans, first of all, they don't do so well with accents, is what I've seen. And then to come from that world into this vibration. And I remember one journalist in particular, and he was from Miami, and he said, I didn't understand a word she said, but he said, as soon as she walked into the room, I could feel the power. And so this energy, this is the beauty, isn't it? It's a subtle thing, but it's palpable.
But can our audience members do that? How do we bring that kind of inner power, that strength to others, so we can not only enhance them, but have them
I think one of the things, and we're kind of touching on it here, but is, as you again do all of the things, or you're just a student, you're a student of life, you're a student of this kind of yoga or this teaching, you start to get very comfortable in your own self, in who you are. And I'm not talking about comfortable lazy, but you're comfortable with the evolving self. And you can be in front of anybody, you know, either the homeless person or the head of state. It's all the same. You don't, so there's, and that's what I think for me would be the important thing, that people, it won't be a conscious thing that they feel accepted by you, but they know they're not going to come to any harm with you. Whereas they may have been suspicious and you know, when it comes to the whole thing, I very categorically, I was not a joiner. The idea of joining a religion or a group or whatever went against my religion, you know, because it seemed to me that you would be cutting yourself off from other possibilities, or you assumed, you know, that your way of thinking was much bigger than the limitations of a group. Oh, that's the arrogance. But then that was the only thing we had until we came to Baba. That's the only thing we had, was kind of like our own intelligence, but we didn't know that it was totally dictated by our ego in a sense. But that it was, you know, I was just seeing, you know, I've seen some students here recently, very perceptive, very clever, you know, aware of a lot of spiritual things, but they are unable yet to embrace this because they're still with the security that their own intelligence had given them, you know, which you can't fault somebody for. So it's almost like, and for me too, it was almost, and this sounds so bad now, it was almost like God had to prove himself to me, you know, before. Who's giving me a thumbs up? I don't know what that's about.
It's so cute, you know.
Yeah, that you're God, prove it, show me, whatever. Well, he did in more ways than one. And and so first the mind-boggling experience in the meditation, which just, you know, changed everything. But then on a daily basis, and even after all this time, you know, all these years, I don't know about the manifestation in terms of my own growth, but there's hardly a day goes by that I don't learn something new, you know, like in today's teaching, the idea that, you know, in this future new world, you won't think. You won't think that there's always something new. There's always this uncovering. You know, again, you are given the course in a few days. You're given all the knowledge in a few days, but then finessing it and finessing yourself through it continues until the end. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think you alluded before to, it's not just the intellect, which can actually block me. Okay, so I get it. But it's the experiential aspect. And that means, and you mentioned this, the feeling.
That's the heart.
The heart.
And you need both of them. You need both of them. And so it's interesting because I see that each one of us who comes usually has one side more evolved than the other. And I think of it in terms of the philosopher or the devotee. That some people will be more devotional in their nature. You don't have to prove things to them. Their heart will get it. Their intuition will get it. The philosopher is like, show me, prove it, you know, and they'll be very caught up with it. But ultimately, you need both components.
You need balance, right?
Yeah, that God has an intellect and God has a heart, you know. And so which is going to purify which? You know, and I do feel that it's in many ways that it is the intellect, it is the knowledge that is the key in changing things. Because without the knowledge, I couldn't have that connection to the source that enables the cleansing of the heart.
But then it's our duty to share what we learn. And that's the experience that I find. And people notice. It's ironic, the same people I think I belong to, family, Lokic family, will be
Yes.
the first ones to say, I remember when my son, I was here maybe a couple of years, and my son said, Ma, I know you don't like to fight. I used to have to win arguments.
Oh, interesting.
It did, I had to
Yeah.
be smarter and better. And how did he know this? He lives 3,000 miles away in California. And I come to visit, and he says, Mom, I know you don't like to fight, but I didn't even hear what he said about his brother because I'm focusing on how did I communicate that?
Yeah.
It just happens.
Just happens.
When you know you're not depending on others to create
It's
an
so
identity.
lovely. It's so lovely where you see, you consciously see yourself behave differently. And as you say, the situation where I have to be right, I'm right, and that's it.
Yeah.
And now, even though you may know the other person's wrong, still, but at least you don't come into, the grossness or the crassness of an argument, know. Yeah.
So I can belong, but they can't own me.
No, that's
ever.
No, they can't possess. You can't be possessed.
Right.
There's
no, this is my group.
You belong to everyone. That you're available. It's beautiful. Yeah.
And that commonality, did you mean that it's unconscious, that we know we're missing, we have a hole in us and we're missing?
Oh, for sure. And it's what's really interesting for me is to see, because I was very definitely, I was a seeker, I was a traveler, and I was 26 when I came to the Brahma Kumaris. I was looking for, it's like you didn't know exactly what you were looking for, but you did know it's not this, it's not this, it's not this, And it wasn't like I walked through the door and went, oh, eureka. No, because as I say, that the intellect with its own kind of discernment and the inclination maybe to not trust when it was an organization or a group. And remember, in those days, it was very small. They had just started in London. But then, when you were with these people, the evidence was compelling, that these weren't ordinary people. We're talking, Daddy Yankee and such. So yeah, but I do feel that every soul has, and what you'll find is that you may be the one in your family who went looking for something. But gradually it's possible, not that it should be an objective, but that then other members of the family, they start to change too. They change. Your behavior changes them. And gradually they begin to partake as well. I've seen that happen.
So we can all affect changes in our groups that we are either forced to belong to, have no choice about.
Right, without even thinking about it. And as I think you are saying, that it's not that you're preaching to them, it's not that you're being the teacher and what have you, or the preacher, but that it's they seeing you change. And it's not even a question of seeing you change, but the thing that I think is the most compelling, they see your happiness. They see the consistency of your happiness.
That is so true.
Yeah.
I live with someone who is very upset by the world and politics, but our home is a haven. Our home is a haven. And some people may think I'm just not politically minded, or maybe there's a hole in my education there. But, it's like the pundits, or it's like, people who gurus who isolate and don't live amongst people, and they have all this knowledge. Political pundits, all of these people are expert, but BKs have to share, and what they have to share is not sorrow.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's
Exactly.
happiness, just as you
Yeah.
said. Yeah.
Yes.
Gee, I'm looking at the time, and
Yes.
we have 5 minutes. May I ask you to take us on a little meditative
Sure,
journey for
sure,
5
sure.
minutes?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the lovely interaction. Yeah.
Thank you for coming to us this
No,
evening.
pleasure, pleasure.
Yeah.
All right, so. I allow the silence. And the thoughts slow down. And the silence enfolds me. And seeps into me. The outside meeting the inside. And I am in the middle of that silence. It's soft and subtle. And light. Like being placed as a baby in warm water. Perhaps it's another kind of womb. And I'm fed through the silence by the supreme source of energy, the mother. And I'm aware of what is within me. And that my energy matches that energy. It's touching and increasing the peace and the love that is inherent in the soul. And I'm lifted and raised so that I'm face to face with that supreme light whose whole vibration tells me that I am loved, that I am known, that I belong, and that eternally I am his. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Oh, gee. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.
What a beautiful evening. Thank you. And
No, thank you. Keep up the good work.
I love this. Before
Yeah.
you leave, don't go away, anyone. I have to remind you that next week, Michelle and I would love to greet you at the door if you're able, in person at Harmony House, as we celebrate Brahma Baba and we talk about belonging, becoming, being, and bestowing. It's a very special night for us, celebrating. Actually, in 1969, on January 18th, he left his body. And this has been a very celebratory month for the Brahma Kumaris. We will have Zoom, I will tell you that, but we would love to see you in person at Harmony House next week. So Om Shanti, be kind, be peaceful, and thank
Very
you
nice.
for being part of
Thank
our
you again.
family. And thank you, Sister
Shanti.
Waddy. Om
Bye-bye.
Shanti. Bye-bye.
Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Enjoy.
Eric. Be happy.
Good night, everyone. Om Shanti.
Good night, Brother Eric. Thank you. Om Shanti.